Very fortunate. I'm a lucky guy and throughout this 43 years. But the chemistry between the President and the Prime Minister of Japan has been very good.
Hi, I'm Shin Yamaguchi. Welcome to Dial in Japan, a brand new video podcast where we'll connect with leaders in government, business, academia, civil society, and beyond. The goal of the podcast is to inspire dialogue and broaden perspectives on all things Japan. For our second episode, I'm delighted to welcome Ambassador Ryozo Kato. Ambassador Kato had a distinguished 43-year career with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, serving as Japan's ambassador to the United States from 2001 to 2008. Ambassador Kato was then the commissioner of the Nippon professional baseball from 2008 to 2013. As Japan's longest-serving ambassador to the United States in the post-World War II era, Ambassador Kato is incredibly well-respected on both sides of the Pacific, and it is my great privilege to have him as our guest today. Ambassador Kato, thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Ambassador, you are the ultimate baseball connoisseur. I love talking baseball with you, and we could talk baseball for the next several hours.
Okay, but I'm just a simple baseball nuts.
Baseball nut, yes, exactly. But we have 30 minutes today, so let's talk about your career. Let's talk about the U.S.-Japan alliance. Let's talk about your ambassadorship, and then talk a little baseball in between. I want to start from your childhood. So you grew up in Akita Prefecture in the northern part of Japan in the 40s, and then moved to Tokyo in your teenage years. What was your first exposure to the United States?
My first exposure to the United States is really not until 1965 when I entered the Foreign Service. And
why did you join the Foreign Service to begin with?
Well, by being members of the Foreign Service, there's a great chance to go abroad. And when in my childhood, it's not so easy for Japanese to go out of the country. Look, at that time, $1, 360 yen. Can you believe it? And right. There was a limit of the amount of the US dollars you can carry out from Japan to go to the United States. $500, only $500. So it's impossible for layman Japanese people, layman citizens of Japanese to go abroad at that time. So I just strongly wish to go overseas. That's it.
And that was because you were a baseball fan at the time, even
even before baseball, I just wish to go out of Japan.
Oh, I see.
But then, if I'm allowed to go out of Japan, right, certainly it's the best thing to go to the United States to watch the baseball games.
And you had seen some baseball games of major leaguers when you were growing up in Tokyo.
Yeah.
In the late 1950s, when some of the...
Well, certainly I have got many Japanese and heroes of the baseball. However, I heard and read in the papers that the other side of the Pacific, the bunch of the much better demigod-like and superstars in the Major League Baseball. I would like to see how they swing, how they pitch, how they field, how they run. That sort of. I exercised my imagination, power of imagination.
And then you got to see them in Tokyo when you were in middle school, high school?
Yeah, actually, and the first time I saw the Major League Baseball, 1955. Postseason in Japan, in Tokyo. New York Yankees with Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra fighting for they visited Japan. And next year, 1956,
yeah.
Brooklyn Dodgers, not the Los Angeles Dodgers, Brooklyn Dodgers.
Okay. Now you're dating yourself, by the way.
Roy Campanella, Duke Snyder, Gil Hodges,
Jackie
and
Robinson.
Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, of course.
Visited Japan.
Yeah.
So I saw one game each, 1955 and 1956.
So that was a memorable.
Such an
you still remember it?
dream coming true.
Yeah. So that's when you got to had some exposure to the U.S. and obviously you're a huge baseball fan growing up. So you go to the Foreign Service. So you joined the Foreign Service in 1965. In 1965, you go to Yale Law School to study law for 2 years. What was that like? This is your first time in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's right. Very first time.
Very first time in the
United
U.S.
States
You're
and
in Yale Law School. Okay,
It was
okay.
very tough. Really difficult.
I know where you're
time.
coming from, by the way. I mean, yeah.
I struggled to get an LLM degree.
It's tons of reading, case law,
Lots
the
of
Socratic
reading,
method.
writing. So tough. And I, now in retrospect, think I should have gone to the undergraduate school for 1 year. Then only after that should go to the law school.
But you studied international public law there, and that has laid the groundwork conceptually for some of the work that you did later on.
Yeah, that's what exactly the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at that time wished the diplomat trainees do. But in my case, I really don't know. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, those are just famous universities. I casually mentioned I'd like to go to Yale.
It's a good idea, by the way.
To Yale Law School. That's simple. But difficult.
Difficult for sure. And I
so much technicalities,
yes,
professionalism. But fortunately,
the classroom discussions, though, you have to keep up with the classroom discussions, speak up.
I try to avoid to the best I can.
Now the professor's like, Ryozo, what's your view on now?
That's right. And see, and the style of education is very different from the United States and Japan at that time. But then the professors, two professors actually, Professor Myers McDougall, international
very
law,
famous,
and Professor Harold Laswell, international politics. They're very kind to the foreign students, including myself.
That's how you survived 2 years in New Haven.
Managed to survive.
Then 1967, then your first professional posting as a diplomat is in Washington, D.C. What was that like, 1967?
1967, I was the junior most member of the embassy. But at that time, Japan was still a rather insignificant island country back in the Far East. It's only 20 years after the end of the Pacific War.
That's right, yeah.
See? And to be
so the economy is
honest,
was not where it is
honest,
today. Yeah.
I had suffered a sort of inferiority complex kind of feeling every day at that time. And the presence of Japan in Washington, D.C.
How was that in the diplomatic circle?
Very different from today.
Oh.
You see, first of all, in the city of Washington, D.C., there are no Japanese automobiles.
Oh.
Except,
at the time,
except just 2 Japanese automobiles in the embassy. No Japanese cars running on the streets.
At the time.
DC. No karaoke, no anime, no sushi.
Oh, okay. A very different time, yeah. Now, so you're there for a couple of years.
2
then
years.
You come back to to Japan. You're involved in the Okinawa
Reversion negotiation.
Reversion Okinawa. Then you had postings in Egypt, Australia. You were again head of various divisions within the ministry. You were posted to San Francisco, D.C., and then 2001 you're posted to Washington, D.C. as the ambassador. And this is, if I recall, October 2001, right after 9/11?
Right after 9/11.
And before we get into your ambassadorship, which I want to ask you about, can you give us, the listeners, some sense of the U.S.-Japan alliance? I know you've devoted a significant amount of your career on the U.S.-Japan alliance back from your days in D.C. in 1967 through 2008.
You see, first of all, the alliance, U.S.-Japan alliance, as you see, and as many people see, is in an excellent condition, I think, in a relative sense. The approval rate by the American people towards Japanese people, constantly around 70-80%. And that's vice
Public
versa.
perception.
Favorable rate.
Favorable, yep.
Favorable rate.
Yes.
From the Japanese side, the same.
Likewise.
Favorable feeling by the Japanese toward the United States and Americans hovers around 70%, 80% over the past several decades. This testifies how big the sort of success the history of U.S.-Japan alliance is. And the cornerstone of U.S.-Japan alliance is U.S.-Japan Security Treaty.
Yes.
Having said that, though, compared to the NATO, U.S.-Japan alliance is not so solid. First of all, under the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, United States is supposed to defend Japan in the case of emergency breaking out this part of the world.
Right.
However, it's not vice versa.
There's no military reciprocity.
Japan is not obliged to help
Right.
the United States if something breaks out in the United States. In that sense, it's not reciprocal. This is the kind of shortfall or very unique feature of U.S.-Japan Security Treaty compared to other security treaties in the world. And so I try to make U.S.-Japan alliance, U.S.-Japan Security Alliance Treaty much closer and as close as possible to NATO.
I see.
You see, by lots of things. And of course, it's not yet completely done. However, today, the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, the alliance based upon that, looks in a pretty good shape.
Right. So you've spent a lot of time when you were the Minister of Foreign Affairs focusing on the security alliance, which, as you pointed out, is a foundation, the building block of the larger U.S.-Japan partnership.
Yes.
And then as ambassador, you are the representative of the Japanese government in Washington, D.C. in discussions with the U.S. government. What was that like? What were some of the key events, challenges, maybe accomplishments that you had as ambassador?
You see, the management of the alliance is not like a gardening.
Gardening. Okay.
You see, as you said, as I mentioned earlier, U.S.-Japan alliance is in a very good state. However, it's not done so automatically. The garden,
you have to keep working on it.
Beautiful garden doesn't beautify itself. To keep the garden beautiful, you have to do lots of things, pruning and weeding and giving fertilizers.
So various
water,
external events, geopolitics, international order keeps on changing. Various players are
some
taking
efforts are
different
visible, the more efforts are invisible.
Yeah, to people like myself, we don't know what's
So
going
we have
on.
to be a sort of good gardeners. We need a bunch of good gardeners for the maintenance of the good alliance.
Now, I think what you're saying there is that, in other words, you have to have constant discussions, dialogue with your counterparts, in this case, the U.S. And so when you're ambassador, you're speaking with the White House, State Department, Senate, various parties. How did you go about doing that?
Most important
maintaining
part
that
perhaps is in the
relationship?
behind the scene. See, just having a professional technical discussions with your counterpart is not enough.
In terms of developing trust.
That's right. To develop a trust, you have to make yourself an attractive guy to the other side and vice versa.
So you're having a full range of conversations, not just on the military alliance, but also getting to know each other as people. What were some of the behind-the-scenes conversations that you had with? I mean, again, I know it's going to be again, you're baseball. I'm not going to call it a baseball nut, but I know some people have a baseball. People know you as a serious baseball fan. Did baseball come up in some of these discussions with folks in D.C.?
Of course, baseball shares a quite important. But then, suppose I have got a very sensitive, confidential information, and I give them first in a timely manner to my friends and counterparts as soon as possible. I get from Japan, for example.
I see.
So always I try to keep our perception of the world, perception of things we have to share the same perception,
Transparency.
transparency
I see.
between the friends and the counterparts. But I can't do this to everyone. So I have to choose one in each area. For example, in the area of the government administration, Richard Armitage.
Yes, Deputy Secretary of State, yes.
He was the man I trusted. And in the area of the Congress, late Senator Daniel Inoue.
Oh, from Hawaii.
Yes, and I concentrated on him. I concentrated all sorts of relevant information, intelligence, and on him.
And then he worked with his Senate colleagues.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay.
He generated all sorts of things. And in the area of justice, late Justice Sandra O'Connor,
Sure.
I tried to keep as posted as possible on U.S.-Japan relationship, the state of U.S.-Japan alliance, U.S.-Japan security treaty, that sort of thing.
Right. And 2001 to 2008, when you were in D.C., that was President George W. Bush on the U.S. side, and then Prime Minister Koizumi, and then Prime Ministers Abe and Fukuda at the time. Is that?
Yeah,
those are the
right.
principles.
Very fortunate. I'm a lucky guy, and throughout this 43 years, but the chemistry between the president and the prime minister of Japan has been very good. But that's not the only sort of story. And underneath the working level, there's a pretty high source of mutual dependence, mutual trustship, the mutual trust under that level. And so it's a teamwork. Ambassador, the DCM, and the members of the political division, the economic, the cultural affairs division, and so forth, and their counterparts.
Got you. So right, you're the head of a team, and all the relevant ministries and agencies are in DC working with you together with their counterparts in the U.S. to make sure that the alliance is forging ahead. So again, that is the gardener. To use the gardener analogy, you are making sure that everything is under control and being discussed. And then what we see on the other side is, for example, President Bush and Prime Minister Koizumi playing catch at Camp David and other things. What were some of the conversations that you had, memorable conversations that you had with some of the folks in DC around baseball?
First of all, when I met President Bush, how many times I met him, I don't remember. But most of the
He's
time,
a baseball fan.
most of the time we talked about baseball. And he's a sort of baseball nuts like me.
Yeah. I see. So that was, and then you introduced and then, for example, when there was a World Baseball Classic, then you hosted the team at your embassy.
Yeah. And in Colin Powell, Secretary Powell, this is in 2005 or 6, I forgot. But then Sadaharu, the home run king of Japan,
yes,
he happened to be in Washington, D.C. And I took that opportunity to seize the moment. And I took him to see Secretary Colin Powell.
Oh, wow.
And then I placed a telephone call
Powell
to...
knew about Osan as well?
Right. And I placed a telephone call to Richard Armitage. And hey, Sadaharu is in town. Why don't you let him see Colin Powell for 30 minutes or something like that. It's not the business, nothing. Just a kind of relaxing moment for the secretary, which Richard Armitage immediately realized. And Secretary Powell, I think, and he himself enjoyed very much. After knowing that he will be seeing Sadaharu next day, he said he saw the video of Sadaharu hitting 756 home run, breaking a record of Hank Aaron.
That's right.
He saw the video.
That, yes.
And he told that to Sadaharu, and your swing is graceful. And after hitting a home run, you running the bases, and that was very graceful. No showboating or nothing, just quietly running. just quite tip.
Yes.
That sort of thing.
Very famous for the home run, yeah.
That kind of thing is very helpful to the advancement of US-Japan alliance.
Yes. And speaking of the US-Japan alliance, big picture, where do you see it going? You have been working on the building block, and it's been a while since you were.
I think the US-Japan alliance is different than the alliance the United States has got. It's in the kind of unique in that I think I may say that US-Japan relationship alliance is like a baseball battery, pitcher and catcher. Prime Minister Kishida, when visited the United States a couple of years ago, he delivered a speech at the Congress. That was very well received, in which Prime Minister Kishida said, Japan will be shoulder to shoulder helping the United States.
Right.
Well, shoulder to shoulder, this is a nice word. However, Japan is not shoulder to shoulder equally at the same height.
Not co-equal in a sense.
Well,
Yes.
not quite equal.
Yeah. Going back to your earlier discussion.
In terms of the height of the shoulder. But then I think United States, whoever is the president, is like a best pitcher in the world. Throw hard, tremendous breaking stuff, dominating. Japan is a catcher who receives, not just receives those balls, but from time to time he can advise, he can lead the pitcher. Good pitcher can't be good without a good catcher.
Exactly.
And pitchers can't compete with the pitchers. It's not a matter of competition like boxing.
So it's a collaborative activity.
Supplementary sort of thing. United States should continue to be the most dominant pitcher of the world, while Japan continue to be the good catcher for the United States.
And has Japan's role as a catcher changed over the years, going back to
in between Japan, pitcher and catcher, and also second, let's say, British, maybe the very good second baseman, we concoct about the strategies and that sort of thing among us to come up with a very good teamwork vis-a-vis another team.
So there's constantly strategizing and understanding where the international political order is.
Pitchers can seek for the microphone. Pitchers must have a kind of affection for microphone. Catchers, no, not so much affection for the microphone, but to do a good work behind the mask and lead the pitcher, exchange signs with the second baseman.
And make sure that you are on the same page. Otherwise, the catcher has to go to the pitcher and have a direct conversation, which may be necessary
I think
at times.
It's the best ideal division of roles and missions between the United States and Japan.
I see.
Whoever the president is, whoever the prime minister is.
I see. So that's fascinating. Let's switch gears, talk a little bit about baseball. Since we've going from the baseball analogy to real baseball, I've been following baseball my life, and it's interesting how the styles of play are quite different in the U.S. and Japan. What are some observations you've had over the years?
Perhaps you can agree with me. And Major League Baseball is a large baseball, while Japan baseball is a small baseball.
Station to station.
And more emphasis on defense. The
Exquisite,
Major League Baseball is mostly on the offense. As well
how about bunting?
Sacrifice bunt.
Sacrifice bunt.
From the top of the inning.
Yes, I think there's those differences. Although we have been seeing a good number of Japanese players go overseas to the U.S. and that has been back in the day when you were waiting for Jackie Robinson, Mickey Mantle to come every year. Now we can watch the major leaguers on TV. I know you watch.
Interesting. Hideo Nomo, Hideki Matsui, and of course Ichiro, and later on Ohtani. These are the best investment and best export from Japan to the United States.
When you were, speaking of major leaguers, Japanese major leaguers, when you were speaking with some of the American major leaguers and Hall of Famers that you got to be friends with, what was their perception of Japanese baseball and also Japanese players?
You see, first of all, they are really superstars, and whoever the Cal Ripken, random sequence, Cal Ripken, Stan Musial, and Yogi Berra, Joe DiMaggio, Willie Mays, Willie Mays, and Hank Aaron,
Hank Aaron,
Hank Aaron, many others. Yes. They are gentlemen, role model. Most of them are role models, you see. So they are kind to Japanese baseball. They appreciate what the Japanese players do in the major league. And but still, the sort of strong arm and just strength and long hitting and those power and performance, Japanese professional baseball can't match that of the Major League Baseball. But then on some minute things like a sacrifice bunt, as you said, or a stolen bases, something on the minute side, and Japanese players can be quite good.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting how when I'm watching Major League Baseball, for example, like you see the differences and also the different strengths of the different players. Oh, like I wish if it's a sacrifice bunt, or a Japanese player could actually easily make the sacrifice bunt that maybe a major leaguer is having trouble doing. So in that regard, and I don't want to speak broadly, but it's interesting watching both Japanese and American baseball because of different styles, different strengths. Different approaches, and I think that's something that can be said of other things as well, whether it be business or culture or anything like that. But that's why I also find it fascinating to compare and contrast different. And it so happens that baseball is a sport that both the U.S. and Japan are deeply invested in.
To add one thing about the speciality of Japanese baseball, Japan is a thinking baseball, very much a thinking baseball. Sometimes it's boring, but at the same time, if you have the deep and interest in the game of baseball, it's fun to watch Japan's baseball.
The strategy behind and
team play,
pinch hitter. You're going to bring a pinch runner here, and a double switch, etc. So, yeah, it's quite interesting. So, yeah, I think I think. It's interesting how we always talk about baseball, but it's just different styles, different styles of play, and then because baseball is, again, as I mentioned, something that is quite popular both in the U.S. and Japan. You had a chance to connect with some of President Bush or Colin Powell, others through baseball to develop those trusted relationships. Although, I suppose, at the very core, you had 40 years of technical experience as a diplomat. So that was on top of that, you needed to develop. So it was both the technical and the trust that allowed you to be so effective when you were in the U.S.
That's right. And for example, conversation with President Bush, he asked me almost three trivia questions. The first one was who was the first African American player in the major league, Boston Red Sox. And the second one was relatively easy. Who was the first Japanese major leaguers? The second one was easy. And it's Masai Murakami of San Francisco Giants. President Bush knew that. But the first one was very difficult, rather difficult. It's Pumpsy Green, and I couldn't answer that. Then President looked very happy. I couldn't answer.
Yeah, because you always say that also humor is important in that personal relationship. I mean, you are on one hand a diplomat, and I see that we're talking about the military alliance, but at the same time, the human touch and having sense of humor? Is that something that it's been important to you over the years?
I think it's in the secrecy of the success of diplomacy, and actually success of all teamwork or something like that. Good sense of humor, any kind of humor, I think. One example, why I was impressed by President Reagan so much. Back in the Toronto summit a long time ago, Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Takeshita, came across with President Reagan. And Mr. Takeshita told President Reagan that, Mr. President, each time I see you, you look younger. It's an amazing thing. Perhaps in your case, the clock moves counterclockwise. President, beaming smile. Thank you, Mr. Takeshita. You are so kind. But no, as a matter of fact, I'm getting old. I know that there are distinctive symptoms, 3 symptoms showing that I'm getting old. The first one is I'm forgetting these days, very forgetting. Number 2 and number 3, I forgot. Well, that sort of thing, and maybe nothing, but so it's that kind of thing can change the entire atmosphere.
The dynamic of the relationship.
Dynamic of the
Although the content of your discussion may have been somewhat tense or sensitive, I don't know, but it can be. It can be.
Right.
Yeah.
You can be tense like this, you see. So that's so it's it's good to see for the communication to come a real live and lively one.
We don't quite get to, for those of us who don't get to be part of these conversations, I think, and for our listeners, I think this has been quite fascinating to understand kind of the holistic relationship that one, as a diplomat, needs to pursue on various channels. And also, as you mentioned, it is a teamwork, and so it is various people focusing on military, trade, culture, etc., and working with their counterparts. And then, as you pointed out, as the ambassador, making sure that you're connected with the State Department, the legislature, and so having that communication, as you pointed out, that transparency, and also, I think, being proactive, I think, is another key element that you often talk about.
Therefore, speeches by the ambassadors, for example, any speech should have a line or 2 of the sort of humorous one to change the sort of atmosphere, brighter side, more dynamic, the lively one.
Yeah, I think it's in those receptions, and also but also in your meetings, I suppose. So I think it's been quite fascinating listening to you and learning about your approach as the ambassador, again, from 2001 to 2008. There were various events during that time, I believe, but to make sure that foundation, that building block, continues to be stronger and continues to be stronger going forward, given how the world is.
It requires a constant effort.
Gardening?
Guarding, not just for myself, but then the generation, next generation, to next generation. We have to relay it.
I know you've mentioned that
you're
as an ekiden. You have your
torch passing,
and you have passed that. But you do your best during your ambassadorship, and then you pass it on to the next ambassador.
Right.
And then
That's right. See, ambassador should never be a sort of achievement oriented. This I have done. It's not good.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Kato. Before we wrap up, any last thoughts you might have to our listeners?
Yeah. To young Japanese people, I'd like to say that you should go abroad for pleasure or business, for anything, you go abroad. In my case, first I went to the Hawaii, because at that time there's no direct flight from Tokyo to Washington. You have to make a brief stop on Hawaii and the West Coast. On the third day, you arrive at Washington, D.C. on Waikiki Beach. Cola on the Waikiki Beach tasted entirely different from cola in Tokyo. And then the baseball park, Yankee Stadium, old Yankee Stadium, see, smells entirely different. So it's not enough to watch that on the TV.
The smell of the grass.
Be there. Smells different.
Yeah, the
hot dog tastes different. Beer tastes different. So seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. You will find lots of things.
So the actual experience.
Right. You see, just listening to this the lecture on the online, it's not enough, because just as it was in my case, and personal conversation in the margin of the meeting with the professors is more important.
Or the president in your case. Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Like my case.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be timid when you see one-on-one with the professors. You can straightforward mention your point to them. They can understand. They can lead you. They can teach lots of things to you. So go there, be there on their own. This is entirely different from watching from far away.
Thank you, Ambassador Kato. That's very insightful, and I think I can see that, and I appreciate your sharing your experiences with us, listeners.
See, thank you very much.
Well, thank you again for joining another episode of Dial in Japan. I hope you found it fun and insightful. If you're interested, please subscribe and dial in next time. Thanks very much, and see you soon.